All right. So, this is Kristy. Kristy, will you just explain a little bit of where you were, where you are currently, and where you're going? So that includes a lot of your story. I'm not
Yeah,
going to ask
it
a ton of
does.
questions because I feel like that you state this so well. I've seen you several times tell your story, and I find it one of the best stories that I've heard because I think that people with judgment, there's a lot of judgment.
Yeah,
And if they just heard, hi, my name is Kristy, this is my story, I think for a minute you'd hear the little maybe verbal,
yeah.
before they heard all of your stories. So I think that that's what I find is so cool about your story is that it is not defining. I mean, even though it took a chunk of your life, it is not defining. And I would say, like, I can confidently say what you've done from maybe the bad parts of your story that just weren't what you wanted to
Hmm.
now. I mean, the journey is amazing. So I'm going to leave it to you if you just want to tell me your story.
Well, when I do speak, that's true. It's interesting because I do hear a little bit of the gasp, and that's because we're not used to people speaking about shameful things. And I think I used to be a wardrobe stylist in Orange County for a long time. I had my own business. And so I like getting dressed up and I like clothes and shoes and all that stuff. And so to stand in front of a group of women and um, tell them that I just got out of federal prison, I get their attention immediately. And I love that. That is what helps me continue to tell my story, because at first I thought I was never going to tell anybody, because why would you tell anybody that you got out of prison? I mean, that's like the worst shameful thing. But I think I've gotten my pulse kind of on women, and including myself, and how we judge and how we just don't really know. And so I like kind of opening people's eyes to like the reality of women in prison. And I believe that's part of why I went through my journey, so that I could be that person to share others' experience that
And
don't
their
have the opportunity,
voice. Would
and
you
their
say, a
voice.
lot of times I know that in a lot of your posts that I see, there are so many things that they really cannot fight for within a penitentiary. They just can't. And therefore that has made them not have a voice. It was probably circumstantial why they're there. And I'm sure they
Yes,
own why they're there. But I think a
really.
lot of times it's just like, okay, now I'm here, what do I do now? Because
Right.
for funding, for representation, for a voice. And I think that you've given that to so many of them. And I think that is so extraordinary.
Thank you. When I was in there, it is really true. You are cut off. You are literally cut off from kind of your judge. You're cut off from your attorney. More or less, you're cut off from everybody, everything except the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So, and I had my mom who was supportive after she got over the shock and the um, sadness and
Disappointment,
the
right? I mean,
disappointment.
I'm a mom, and I think that that's like when you're building that goal for your child, and you're like, this was not in my globe of what I wanted you to do, but
Yes, yeah. She actually was shocked. She couldn't believe that it was actually even true. And I was shocked even though I was in the middle of it. But yeah, my mom was that voice. And it's interesting because when I think all women have secrets or have things that they don't share, either about themselves or things they do or things they like or their dislikes or relationships or something we don't share because we think we're ashamed or it's hard to ask for help. And so when you're an addict and you have all these secrets, and it's part of even like self-loathing. It's not just like, I'm not going to tell you. It's like, I don't want to admit what I'm doing, because then I have to stop and I have to face everything. And it just seems so big, especially when you feel like, I don't want to tell anybody because I feel so much shame. And especially when you have a loving family. I have a loving family. So that was even kind of worse. And so when then you end up in a federal prison and all your secrets get displayed on the news. It was all over all the newspapers and everything. That was like, talk about take your breath away. It still takes my breath away because it's so, it's just shocking. Like, oh my God, I am filleted open and everyone knows every single solitary, dirty secret about me. And it's horrific, really.
I wanted to ask you really quickly. So like, because we, nobody knows this story in like a
Right.
lot of my community, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you, like you mentioning that, was your family aware of the addiction?
Yes.
Okay, so they had that premise. They had like, oh, she's struggling here, but they never thought it would get to here.
Right. And
Okay.
so when I was born, I was born with birth defects. So I was in the hospital a lot. I've had like 40 operations. I spent a lot of time in the hospital as a baby and all the way through high school. And so I learned how to deal with emotions with pain medicine. I established a habit of dealing with anything with any kind of Demerol or morphine, and it was prescribed to me. So there was always that fine line between, she's having an operation. She's in the hospital for 3 weeks. So there's always this fine line between someone who looks normal, who is, a nice, joyful person, but who's gonna argue about taking pain medicine from them. And so that was the start of my addiction as a little girl.
Well, and I think too, with people that are addicted to pain medication, I think a lot of times they're trying to commit. Like I worked in a family practice. We worked with Suboxone, the Suboxone program, which is what
Mm-hmm.
they try to wean people off pain
Yeah.
medication. But I think one of the things that they try really hard to convince you, and you probably did the same, is, I really am in pain. And the thing is you are in pain. I think that is one of the biggest misjudgments that we place on people, is like, why are you taking that? And I think legitimately the pain is huge.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically. I mean, when you have those like birth defects, or you've had a broken back, or that pain is so central that you do experience pain. And I think that's the thing, is that you're like, I don't want to feel the pain, that trauma that you experience from the pain. And the way to mask the pain there is a fine line, because there is a reason why the pain medication was developed. It's just when it crosses over to numb completely. And we all have that numbing device. I have it. You have it. It could be our egos. It could be an eating disorder. It could be narcotics. It could be benzos, where we just want to go to sleep. So I think that's one of the things that I wanted to say, is that whatever your vice is, the result is to numb. There's a difference between having the pain go away and completely checking out and numbing. And I think that's where a lot of us are.
Numbing and wanting to change the way you feel. It's an interesting thing to say, hey, I'm feeling funky. I want to change this, instead of like, wow, I wonder what's going on. Checking in with your body and doing, eating better and exercising and all that. Instead, it's like, oh, I don't want to feel this. And so when you're a kid, I really, as a child, I thought that because in the past they had those ether masks. Mm-hmm. And so they would put the mask over your face to make you sleep, and makes me emotional still. I thought they were trying to kill me. I didn't know as a little kid, that I just remember the doctor's face and trying to put that mask. And so, I wanted to not have pain, but I also didn't want to feel fear. I had loving parents, like I said, who were at the hospital every day. And my dad would stare at me, how are you feeling? Like I knew he wanted me to tell him I was feeling okay, and so
you're a pleaser. You're a pleaser by nature.
Oh, I'm such a pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
I am such a pleaser. And I am a pleaser. And I felt responsible as a child. I felt responsible for people's pain, because I saw my father would say sometimes, Chris, I promise this is the last operation you're going to have. I talked to God, I promise. And I remember thinking, oh, I feel so bad for him. Like I know he was trying to help him, probably help himself, but also with me. But I didn't need, personally, that was not the way to make me feel better. I didn't know that. I thought that how I felt and how I responded was going to be the end all be all of their world. And I'm realizing as I'm getting older that that's not true. I probably could have said, "Hey, I'm sad," or "I'm hurting," but I never did, ever.
But from the flip side, as a
Yeah,
parent, to watch your child suffer and
yeah,
you have zero, like you are as helpless. And the saying, fake it till you make it.
right.
I feel like many parents, the child needs their, it's going to be okay. I know as an adult that sometimes, even if you're lying to me, I need you to tell me I'm going to be okay. And even if you don't know the future, which your dad couldn't promise, he didn't have the power to promise you
Right.
that that was going to be your last operation. But I understand him and I relate with him so much in just saying, it's going to be okay, even though you have no idea whether that's the case. And in fact, most times, it's not going to be.
But let me tell you, I flipped that script. I have an aversion to that. And I think because I used to get a little bit angry because I thought, you can't say that. And so are you making yourself feel better? So I would rather you say, and what I say to people that are hurting, I said, "I promise you will feel better soon." Or "I promise that I'm right here with you." Because what that does is it allows me to have my emotion, because I didn't think, if it's like it's going to be okay, then there's no room for pain, or there's no room for tears. There's no room for any of that. And maybe that's just coupled with my personality, because I did take a criminology class right when I got out of prison to say, what the hell? Why did I do that? I wanted answers. And what I found was it's just a combination of things. So I think it was just my personality that I wanted, would be nice to have someone say, "Hey, I bet this really sucks." And what I find interesting too, in the hospitals now, they have people called child life specialists, which is amazing. And all they do is help kids and families talk about emotions. I was like, woo, that is awesome.
We really have evolved in really paying
Yes.
attention to the emotional part of a wound.
Yeah.
I know that like when you said, hey, when I go to comfort someone, I think part of and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the reason why you are super transparent is what you come from. You feel like, I cannot lie. I cannot lie anymore. I did that for this long and I need to be transparent. And so in going back, so you had all of these childhood birth defects, you had legitimate pain. It went into you. So did you attend normal school? Did you go to school, high school, and have a
Yeah.
normal like life as far as socially? Did you have a normal social life?
Yeah, I had a normal one. A lot of times I was taken out of school for a few weeks at a time or a few months at a time. But yeah, I had a normal social life. I'm still friends with a lot of the girls from high school now. And so, but I also have that little edginess, the adventuresome. So I was someone who partied in school. I was always, again, trying to change the way I felt and interested in what's over there, or how's that going to make me feel. So I partied a lot, and that led me to, I still did the pills, because I worked at the same time too. I worked at Nordstrom selling shoes, a good salesperson, and taking Dilaudid every few hours. So it
So
always
you were
crossed the,
functioning. I mean,
yeah,
nobody could have, like, you were very well, like, integrated,
yeah,
addict. You did
yes.
well.
Yeah, and I was married. I got married to a police officer. I thought I actually thought he would kind of calm me and have me be a little more, I don't know, a little more not so wild, I guess. And we were together for almost 10 years. And I ended up, during that time, I got sober. I took some pills and I took too much. And I got pulled over by his sergeant, which was so horrible. I felt so bad. And at that point I thought, okay, I have to try not to try to get sober. And I didn't know anything about sobriety. I didn't know anything about not taking pills as a normal way of life. And I did. And I was sober actually for almost 10 years. And in the meantime, my husband and I were going through an adoption because I couldn't have kids. And during our adoption, I found out he was having an affair. And so, and the same time my father was dying. So I had all these emotions, and instead of leaning into people and friends, and I had support, I kind of backed out because I had so much I didn't really know how to deal with. And so I was just quiet about it. And I went in the hospital, and the ladies, and I wasn't in pain, but she said, hey, I'll get you a pain shot. And it was like, like, okay, which way am I going to go? Am I going to go honest and say I don't need it or not? And I was thinking, I just need a little bit of relief, just a little bit. No one will know. It's a pain shot, not pills. It's going to be fine. And that's what led me down, and I couldn't stop. Then I was
just going to ask you, like, I have very neurotic and addictive behavior. And I think that, even though logically you are like, that dialogue's going through your head, you're like,
oh yeah,
I don't need it. I know that this will send me. I know it will.
Yeah.
But just that release to escape what you were going through for just a minute, I feel I can understand it more than anything that people say about addiction, is that if there was just for just a minute, I could not think of the worry, the fear, the sadness. And in having a broken heart, I think that is almost worse than the rest of the stuff that's going on, because you're like, I again was not chosen. Like, what is going on? Like, what, and it makes you, it's less about the person that has chosen someone else, and you make it all about all of your flaws and what you did wrong and all of these moments that you may have done things to hurt. And at the end of the day, it's so hard to just put that in like a little nutshell and say, someone broke my heart. I watch people that have had their heart broken, and their ability to see the good is so difficult, because they gave somebody that key to their heart. They gave it to them. And so there is a wound. That wound is really real. And so amongst all of the other things that you were going through, I can't imagine myself not accepting the release. I can confidently say at the moment, with the same factors, I'm not justifying it. Right. I would have probably taken the release. I would have taken a minute.
That.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's why I speak so much about all of it now, because at the time I thought that I was the only one with all these emotions and these flaws. And so I never spoke about it. And so now that's why I speak about it, because in doing a tiny bit of speaking and going to prison and having people write me and tell me all their secrets, I thought, dang, why didn't you tell me all that stuff when we were out and about? I thought I was like my own private island, when actually everyone around me was their own private island too. So now that's it. I think if I was in that same situation, I would be very different about it.
Would you have reached out to them more now that you've left? Would you have said, hey, but again, we're still guarded, whether we're here in our normal lives or we're behind prison walls. Like, we are guarded. And you're like, if I give you a piece of my story, I'm allowing you to judge me. I'm allowing you, even though you're having judgment already, if I give you a piece of my story, that vulnerability is immense.
Yes. But the neat thing is that there was this book once in school that said something like, what was it called? Like, use your voice and the people that need to hear you will hear you. Something to that effect. So I know all the brokenness in people. I don't really like the word broken. I guess the flaws. And I always thought that flaws were not okay. It sounds crazy, but I thought, I'm not. I remember one person said, well, you're a flawed human being. And my immediate reaction was, no, I'm not. And I thought, that is weird that I would think that. But so I understand trauma.
That's what your flaws are. Just
trauma.
Like, your flaws are trauma. So
yes,
the flaws that we have, we're overcompensating for trauma. That's what your flaws are.
And everybody has them.
Everyone does.
Everybody. And I didn't know that. I don't know why I didn't know that, but I had no idea. So then you're thrust into this prison, which how I got there was getting that shot. Then they gave me 100 Vicodin afterwards, which, I took, and then I just kept going. And then I had been seeing someone, and he had relapsed, and he called me to help him. He was in Palm Springs. And so I did. And then I dropped him off at the hotel, and I thought, what is all this? And I thought maybe this will help me stop doing these pills, because I knew I was on this other path again. And that's the, addictive thinking, which isn't clear. And then so I tried methamphetamine, and I liked it. It made me immediately stop the pills. I didn't want anything to do with it. So I thought, well, this I won't be addicted to. This I can,
Manage.
I don't know, manage. Yeah, manage. I thought I could manage. And that took me to, I was in the middle of my wardrobe styling business. That took me to not doing my business because I couldn't stay sober, and took me to selling it so that I could pay my mortgage and not have to do my business. And I love my business. I love my clients. They were like shopping with people. And, it was amazing. And I stopped that. And so we sold a priest, actually, who lived in Connecticut, and he was being followed, and we got caught, and I was thrown into prison for 5 years. A five-year prison sentence. And the interesting thing, before that, when my husband worked in the jails, I would go there and bring him lunch in jails. And now here I am in prison. It was insane that I was there. And because I had medical issues, they put me in a maximum security in Texas. So that was a whole other thing. I thought I was going to be in a camp, my attorney said, because I was a low level, and they were kind of shocked that I got 5 years for my first time. And, but yeah, I was in a maximum security. So on that, the good part about it is that I learned a lot about women. I learned a lot about the system, a lot about trauma. I told my mom, I said, if you took everybody out of here that had major trauma, there'd be like just a few people in there. A lot of trauma.
On a prior Zoom call that I had been on with you, you had mentioned like just acclimating to being in prison, and how every night it was just such a struggle. You were so sad, and you just, for the first little bit, you didn't want to make a friend. You were scared. You were scared of the people you were surrounded by. You were sad, like you were literally alone amongst other people.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and also when you're in the middle of addiction, and that it stops, and you're with yourself, with all those emotions you had been running from, and now you're in a prison cell, alone at times, and you're just left with all of that. It's hard. It's heartbreaking. It's emotional. It's painful. Like not being able to breathe, painful. It's hard.
What did you do? So after you got past that initial, okay, this is where I'm at, I'm not going anywhere. How did you finally go from feeling scared, feeling sad, to say, you know what, I've got to grow where I'm planted right now. I've got to seriously, like, what did you do? Like, what were your first steps? I know that you journaled a lot. You wrote a lot.
I wrote a lot towards the last half, but in the beginning, let's see, I got arrested in Las Vegas. So I don't remember it that well. And then they sent me to Rhode Island. And there's Con Air, all that stuff. And I didn't know where I was going. We were just black box shackled in the airplane. And so when I got to Rhode Island, there was an older gal she was a Catholic gal. She was probably 90 years old, and she had been coming there every Tuesday, get emotional, for 20 years. She walked into the prison, the women's prison, and just loved them up for 20 years every Tuesday. And so I went because I wanted to breathe. I could not breathe. Like, what the heck am I doing here? I said that really for like the whole 5 years I was there. And she would talk to me about, God's love. And I grew up in church, but I was not Catholic, and I didn't understand having a relationship with God. And I said, I'm not finding Jesus in jail. That is disgusting. That sounds so like terrible. You hear about people going to prison and, finding the Lord. And I said, I'm not doing that. That's not who I am. And she said, honey, you don't have to do that. And she put her little hand on she said, but this is where he has your undivided attention. And for some reason, when she said that, it just was like a warmth on my body. And I said, that's true. He has all my time, so I pretty much read Psalms so that I could breathe. It's the only thing that helped me sleep at night. And I highlighted it and at the same time, I have this voice that says, look at you, Jesus in jail, just like everybody else, like that negative talk. And so
why was there
kind of
shame
funny
around that? Can I ask you, why was there shame in finding Jesus in jail? Just because it was a cliche?
Because it was a cliche, and it's like, oh, now you want help, or now because it's a cliche, and it felt weak to me, like I shouldn't be doing
As
this on
goes
my own.
the normal thing is that the time that we look for God is when we're at the depths, like the lowest part, when we're not looking for him, when we are high, like on a cloud and doing well. I mean,
Right.
we learn to, right? We learn that like we need him in the good and in the bad. But I look at myself and I look at people that I taught you this, like, God is not a part of my life, da 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 da. And then, at the end of the day, that's who they're pleading with for either their life, their child's life, change of action, whatever. And so I think that coming from that, this is the thing that I'm the most scared of, that I was the most scared about, is saying, when I have pled to the Lord before saying, hey, will you help me with this? And I didn't get the answer that I wanted to, I was so afraid to pray to him when I needed the answer so badly that there was a lot at stake. I was afraid that he would turn his back on me.
Yeah, I never really had a relationship with him. I just went to church. I knew he protected me. I knew he loved me, but I didn't have a one-on-one relationship with him. And so when I started reading Psalms and I would pray, my prayer was just, help me breathe.
Simple.
Yeah. It wasn't get me out of here. I mean, I'm sure that was sprinkled throughout, but it was help me breathe. And I got help breathing. I got help breathing. I got help just being able to be in my own body in a prison cell. I mean, yeah, there's a lot with that. But so starting to establish a relationship with him, meaning getting out of my own will, my own self, my own way, and saying, I need help. Just those words or those thoughts was really the first time I ever asked anyone for help, family members or anybody. And so I have so many experiences that were just only miracles from God throughout that time, so that now it's so easy to live my life in the way that I do, and the way that I speak, and the way that I am of service, because God is like, he's inside me. I could be in like Mormon church, Catholic church, it doesn't matter, Presbyterian, Baptist. I love it all because I know what their own heart is towards God, and God's in me. So it doesn't really matter where I am. And that's why I think my life, since I've gotten out, has been so extraordinary. And extraordinary, not because I live in my big house in Laguna Niguel anymore, but extraordinary because the peace and the joy that I have on a daily basis is just mind-blowing to me.
So when you get, I don't know how actually what happens, but you find out, okay, my release date is here. What were your feelings knowing? So I know that your feelings going in were all of those, the fear, the having to feel all of the feelings that what you've done and whatever. But I would say you probably face those exact same emotions knowing, hey, here's your release date. Walk me through that a little bit.
Well, the interesting thing is I was in a drug program called RDAP. And it is a residential drug treatment. And when I got sentenced, the judge said, you'll do this program and you'll get a year off. And so I said, okay. So I'm in Texas. I'm trying to sign up for this program. And the women in there are saying, Kristy, you can't do it here. They don't graduate people. And I thought, I'll be able to graduate. I'm not going to do drugs or have sex. And they said, no one graduates. And I thought, well, I will be able to, how we are. And so I did this program, and it was hard to say the least. It was, in theory, it would be a good program, but they ended up kicking me out right before I was going to go home because they said I was inauthentic. And I said, I don't even know what that means. If I was authentic, I wouldn't be in prison. Like, help me. I went with the whole list of things that I wanted to accomplish. And it was just a long, painful process for me.
I think
And
that they were saying you're inauthentic, like, hey, you're playing the system, you're checking the boxes, that's why you're here. And they're trying to assume where you were, like emotionally. Like, I don't understand. Like, why would you, as a facilitator, why would you not want to see people successful in a program?
to be honest, money. And
They didn't want to provide any more money for you to be, because they got state funds for you to be there.
yeah, well, because I had medical issues and was in Texas, they had me categorized as a care level 3, which meant I needed help with getting dressed, bathing, and eating in the morning, which is almost near death. And I said, number one, you don't help anybody with that. Number two, I don't need help with that. I'm actually working landscaping, mowing your lawns, but they got close to $60,000 for people with I know it's, I mean, I can go on and on about that stuff, but so if I leave, then they don't get money anymore for that. And so because it was in the medical center, they all
Also,
that's
I'm thinking the
wasn't
opposite.
what.
They want to keep you there. They want
Yeah.
you down to their program so they can get state funds. Oh, like, I was just like, why? Okay, I understand.
Hmm.
No, it's not good,
And
but I
yeah,
understand.
and I tried to appeal to the regional, but the lady in charge, her husband was a regional person, so he would have to go against his wife. And so, but it out of the 32 people that were in my thing, there was only one that they let graduate, who was ended up staying for another 5 years anyway. So there's so many things about all that. So anyway, that was devastating to think I'm going home in a few weeks and now I have to do another year in prison. So that was the first of my like breaking again. It's like I broke with being in there, and then I broke of like it was hard. It was horrific
Well, I
actually. I
can't
mean,
imagine. You thought you
it
were getting
was on.
out, and then all of a sudden
I
they're like,
thought
just kidding, you're not.
another year. I mean, they throw away years. They throw around those numbers like, days. But yeah, I saw it was on an Air Force base, and I saw, these jets going, and I'm staring at that going, I know I'm as smart as them. I'm a good person. And I'm getting kicked out of a drug program and have to do another year. I mean, it was I felt suicidal, and I never feel like that. So it was hard, but God really worked with me with that. I was trying so hard to get a job um, in the religious services. I thought, well, this is where God would want me. But I kept trying and trying. I couldn't, but I got a job in landscaping with the flowers, which was, now I look back and I understand, because of the gal that was my boss, who is now out because of clemency, said, Kristy, this is your flower bed. This is you and God right here. So it's like I got to, plant a tulip and talk to God constantly. I realized, that when they say pray without ceasing, it hit me. I said, this is what I do all day, every day, which is just talking, which is really the bottom. Help me understand. And the interesting thing is, the person that I went to prison with, who's in California, got out before me because he finished his program, and he could not stay sober. He still does not talk about it. He's in shame, and he is really trapped in his own beach house of a prison in California. And because I was still I watched him not succeed, which made me decide to go to Oregon instead, because I was planning to get out, and we had been together for a lot of years. And so,
You planned on furthering your relationship with him. Hey, you
yeah,
do your time, I'll do my time, we'll get out. And you like recognize that, like, this will never work.
because he got out and
Right.
used. I mean, he's like me in the fact that he's a college graduate, international traveler, all that. He's not what you would think as somebody who would be in prison. And so I thought for sure he'd be on the same page as me, but he didn't establish any kind of a relationship with God or higher power. He just kept saying, Chris, when you get out, we'll go to church. When you get out, we'll do this. And so I thought, I don't want that. I want you to do that. And then for me having to be in another year, I got to watch him do what I didn't want to
Which
do.
there's the gift.
Yes.
So like, I think that is the hardest thing for me, is like, why does it have to have, like, why do you have to show me the lessons this way? But it is, it's so like that. It's like, I was showing you what was going to, and you kept going on and on. And so in order for you to literally see how it was going to be, you had to watch him live how your life would be had you gotten out.
Yeah. Hard lesson.
Sucks.
Really hard. Yeah. Yes.
So I was going to ask you, so you're talking about the lady that like told you about the flower beds. And I remember you telling a story about how you really wanted to be like the coveted place to be was the kitchen, because to work in the kitchen, just because you got to see the food, then you knew you were going to eat, you knew you weren't going to get the expired food, These are not the same people. The lady that was the head cook at the kitchen and the lady that told you about the flower beds, totally different.
No.
And so the story about the lady in the kitchen, how her crime, she knew, you had said she knew she was never getting out. Like she knew because of her crime, she knew she was never getting out. And it was talk amongst the people that you were in the prison with about what she did. Like you never really knew what she did. And then one day you were able to hear what she did and why she did it. And I think that this is when I really, it solidified is that you cannot hate, dislike, or not respect a person once you know their story. Their circumstances is so different than maybe what you would have done. But at the point that this happened, like you said, she had no other choices. And I understood that about her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really got a deep lesson in curiosity. Instead of judgment, be curious about people.
Walt Whitman.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, really? Is that?
Yeah, it's like, rather than being judgmental, be curious. I just actually revisited that watching Ted Lasso, and it was kind of a cute way that he told the story. But if you ask no questions, you will only have the judgment.
Yes. Yeah. And the really amazing thing is the more curious you are, the more questions you ask. I have found that the more rich my life is. I wouldn't have never thought that, but because I know people's stories and their circumstances and, sat with them eating. I'm at a table and I'm eating with like, a serial killer, a gangbanger, lady who, did something bad to her husband, a nun. I mean, oftentimes I would smile, go, God, I wish I had a picture. I wish I had a camera of like everything going on here. And the love amongst women in there, it's so layered and so deep. And I think nobody really knows what they would do unless they're in that exact situation, right. Which allows me not, I don't have the judgment. And I was living with, a gal who's a serial killer who will be in there till the day she dies. My mom read a book about her. My mom panicked that I was in there with her. And now she helped me a lot. And we did lots of crafts together. And now my mom continues to write her, sends her guideposts. And in the shift of the judgment to pouring into somebody is miraculous. Not saying, hey, it's okay, you can come to my house and whatever, but you can just love someone. I don't know if that makes sense.
And offer that compassion. I think that's the thing, is that I may not agree with what you do or what you've done, but I can definitely give you compassion for any of the pain or the hurt that you felt. And I think that's something that that your experience has given you, probably, as opposed to many of the people that you meet. You're like, you have no idea what people have gone through. And even if let's say we both went through the same thing, the way that you handled it and the way that I handle it would be different. The way that I felt it, the way that you felt it might be different. I gathered right from the get-go that you are an empath. That
Yeah, probably.
so yes, like, so people's feelings, they didn't necessarily need to be said, because you automatically knew that you needed to be something for somebody that you necessarily weren't feeling. You felt their pain, you felt their, and being in a place that with close quarters, it's not like you're able to go outside and hide. Like, you can't, you're literally front and center with people for 5 years.
Yeah, you're literally, there's maybe 6 inches between your arm and their arm. 4 people in a room. So yeah, and then too, what I was going to say is that going into prison and being alone as a person that's a people pleaser, that established room for me to have no one to please. So it really created some space for me to say, well, what is Kristy like? Without wondering and worried about anybody else. And that was another big gift that I got, because realizing that starting to use my voice a little bit and what I need or what's important to me, and working in that has helped me navigate that outside of here. And what I never realized is that is where all the magic is. And I missed it for a lot of years.
Did
Does
you
that make
feel at
sense?
all you had to please the people, like your roommates, the people that were in there? Like, you're a service-oriented person, so I
Yeah.
know that you would have done like just the little things in life. If they missed a meal, you maybe would bring it, or like whatever happened, like whatever,
Right.
however you could serve them. But you didn't feel this responsibility measure that you were in any way responsible for them.
No, and you know what? There was a lot of people a lot of women in there have that same thing. A lot of women have that same people pleasing, half of maybe why they're in there anyway. And there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of love, for lack of a better word, with people that are totally different cultures, different upbringings. And so, yeah, I was able to learn a lot about the different cultures, and step into who I was. And that's really powerful for women. I want women to know that don't hide that thing in you, or don't look at it as a flawed thing. It could be a magnificent thing if it's used for good, or if you're honest about it and you have people cheering you on. I don't know if that makes
It
sense, but
totally makes sense.
it's such a big thing for me.
Well, like, there's so much you've done since then that we've got about 15 minutes left. So I wanted to, but one of the things that I just thought was amazing is that you leave something, you're starting at a deficit, actually. You don't
Yeah.
have, you literally have the clothing that you went in with, and you're coming out. Now you have family, but I feel like that like, conditionally, they're probably saying, hey, we need to let her figure this out because this is part of the deal, this, this. And so you get out. What was your first, like, if you, mine would be the first meal. Like, that's the first thing I'd say, okay, now where am I going to eat first? But what was your first thing, the first thing you wanted to do? Like like right as soon as you got out?
It was meal. It was food for sure.
What was that first meal?
Yeah, I was in Texas, and there was a camp across the street, and they had 2 girls come from the camp to drive me to the airport. And so it was weird just being free, listening to music, going to the airport. And I love to travel, so it was weird being in an airport with no luggage, and you're in these sweats, and that was odd. And when I was in the airport, when I was in Denver, was my layover, and I wanted to like barbecue anything with like lots of yummy stuff, and it didn't set right with me. But I don't know what my expectation was, but and then when I walked by the gates for Orange County, and I was still sad because I was feeling like I was not able to go home to Orange County. That was my home. So I passed by the gate that's at Orange County, and I kind of cried. I was like, God, I'm not being able to go home. And then Palm Springs, which I love Palm Springs, that's my other place. And then it said Medford, Oregon. And so my thought was still, God, going to Medford, Oregon. I didn't want to go there. My family was there, so I wanted to go there for that reason, but I still had this thing like, I'm still not able to go home. And so it's funny now when I think back on that, what we perceive as not as being something that is a punishment or not as good as what is the opposite of what happens when we let God kind of, when we're open enough to have God kind of guide us into the direction, but yeah, so it was really being okay with going to Medford and eating barbecue. And then there was a man on the plane that said, "So were you here for business or pleasure?" And I just kind of laughed. I thought, oh, I said, I'll have to get back to you on that, because I'm like, I don't want to lie, but I'm not going to tell him what I was there. So it was the first time someone asked me where I was, and I didn't tell them.
Yeah. So since then, you graduated with your master's. Is that correct?
Oh, with my bachelor's.
Bachelor's. And then you are like, tell me what you're doing now. What programs are you working on? I know that you're with a nonprofit. I know that I love your posts when for clemency, people that are wrongfully imprisoned, basically giving people an outlet to be able to, everybody needs people, even people in prison, and encourage people to write letters, and the stories of some of these people. And I love seeing those things that you share. And so where are you now?
Well, I loved the fact that when I got out, I met people. I mean, God poured so many women in my life. I was very trepidatious about speaking my story, but each time I did, it just seemed to do really well for people and myself, and then it connected me to a lot of people. So I realized the opposite was true, that if I shared, then I would get connection. So I wanted the women that were back in there to know that there are people out here that are not addicts or not been in prison that have the same feelings that they do. And so I asked women to write women in prison, and I thought they were just going to say some nice comments, but they actually told them all their secrets. So it was this big connection, so that the people inside felt that, wow, someone out here really cares about me and is going to send me a book or a magazine. And so it was so there's a big community out there, out and in. So it's like inside out. So
well,
I've been working on that.
Prison, right? One's in a prison and one's in a legitimate prison. And I think, obviously people say, oh, I think it'd be the same. You're like, it wouldn't. But I think that that there are very, very many people I did a talk one time, it's called Cage Free. Very, very many people are in a cage. I think that whether they do it themselves, whether it's other people, but I think that was the relatability they had with somebody that actually was incarcerated to them, is they felt like I can actually talk to somebody that may understand what I'm going through, because they have not found that source within their life.
Yeah, and really, they can find that source within their life if they, you can't tell everybody what's going on with you all the time, but if you reveal a little bit of yourself to the people around you, and if you feel like you don't have anybody like that around you, then you need to get some more people. That's one of the things about social media that was so good for me when I got out, because like you said, I was by myself. I was in a town I didn't know. I didn't have my business or a house or anything. And then when I finally got onto social media, I met different people like you that I can share with. And then we had this connection. And I think if we're vulnerable enough to share a little bit about who we are, then God brings those connections to us. And I think if we don't do that, then we do a disservice to humanity, a disservice to women, and a disservice to ourselves. So that's why I always like spreading that information. And I'm sure there's people that will judge my story or judge me, but I just know that they're probably in pain themselves. So I can give them a hug. It doesn't bother me as much. And so, I'm working to just kind of bring voice to the women in prison. I just got an email from the senator of Oregon to tell me that the bill that we drafted to ban the criminal history box on college applications is being written and should hopefully pass in the next session, which made me laugh. I'm like, wow, I get, you know, who would have thought getting kicked out of a drug program for being inauthentic, and now I get an email from the senator. There's times that I just stop, you know, it makes me cry and it makes me smile, like, wow, we can do so much. You know, he's like, hey, Kristy, love Michael. And I'm like, it's just, you know, and I don't say that in a bragging way. I would have
Not at
never
all.
shared that before. I say it in a way like, holy crap, we can do this. So we're getting that done. I'm working with the
Got to vote.
governors. Huh?
Tell me how you got to vote.
Yeah, I got to vote. Was the
Sorry, I
first
didn't hear
time
that.
because a lot of people that have felonies can't vote, which I think that's completely wrong. I understand that people commit a crime or do something wrong, they have to be punished for it. I needed to, we all have consequences. No one is arguing that, but the consequences can go for years and years and years to keep people down. And I would have never thought that before until I actually went through it myself. So voting, I think, is so important because we know, I mean, personally, the people that are in prison that have been there have a I think more of a stronger pulse on what's going on in the whole country instead of just people hanging out with the people that they know or that, you know, in their communities. So I think it's really important for them to have a voice with that. And it's not all just gangbangers in prison. It's beautiful women. It is people that have made mistakes, that are people pleasers, that have shame and trauma, dripping in trauma.
But
So
it's
how
also a
dare we as a
constitutional right. Just because you have done wrong and you've made mistakes, I've done wrong and I've made mistakes, none that has landed me incarcerated, but I've made mistakes, but I still have the right to be treated like a human. I have the right for medical care. I have the right to vote. Like, these rights are given to us because people have paid for the right for us to do so. And so I loved hearing that. I loved you sharing your story about that. I think that just, to me, is just like, and like you said, I don't think that, like, when you go to vote, you definitely know the things you're looking for because it affects your life, right?
Right.
I think that pretty much when you're in prison, these certain laws affect what's going to happen to you. And
Yeah.
and so they did. And so you definitely have an opinion, and that's my right to have one. That's your right to have an opinion. And I think that opinion is not judgment. And I think that that's something that we need to clarify. Just because I have
Right.
an opinion does not mean that I'm judging you good or bad, but I do have an opinion and I have a right to my opinion.
Yeah, let everybody have their own opinion. We will all see things differently, based on our experience, based on our personality, based on our family, based on a million things. So how dare we think that we should have the same opinion as someone else? And that's where the curiosity factor comes in. Hey, you know, there was a girl that was in the prison that was she was mean, and so finally I'm like, why are you
Why are
being
you
such
so
a
mean?
bitch? Huh? Yeah.
How are
Yeah,
you?
because she always called everybody bitch, bitch. And I said, why do you call me bitch all the time? She goes, well, that's what my mom called me. And I'm like, all right, bitch. Sounds kind of funny, but it
Stop
was,
doing that.
yeah. But then she would say, hey, if I had a visit, she would take an hour to iron my hair with an iron. So it's like all those, we think we know, here's a lady who's being mean, but then there's this part of her. And it's like, we could miss a lot of goodness or loving situations if we don't ask questions.
So in conclusion, I want to ask you this, and it's kind of a hard thing to ask, but if you were to say, with the life that you've led, the experience you had, the goodness you've seen, what would be your mission statement? What would be, like, this is what, like, if I were to give you any advice and sum it into some mission statement, I can tell you mine to kind of see where mine is. I honestly believe that no matter where you are in your life, if you serve, it will be the biggest, you will gain the biggest reward. And you may not understand what you're doing, but I believe if you serve, that it will make sense, and it definitely helps wherever you are in your life. So, and you can do that no matter where you are.
Yeah, in fact, when I got out of prison, and I would journal, all I said at the top of every single day was, help me be a light in someone's life and help me be of service, because that is all I had for several months. I could serve and I could be a light. I had no money, but I could do those things. And that's what kind of created this good life that I have now from that. But my mission statement would be, wow. I think, boy, I really believe that women have so much power that we kind of squash it, or we allow people to squash it. And so I want people to know that everything that they have inside of them, that they already have what they need to do the thing that they want. So my mission statement would be is to find your people, tell your people that you're afraid, and go forward anyway, because that's where all the magic is. And being of service is part of that as well. Bring people along with you. Tell people, hey, I'm afraid. Look what I'm doing. Come on, come with me. You can do it too. In whatever way they want, meeting them where they are. And be curious.
Well, as you're I want to tell you, I'm so proud of you. Like, I'm very grateful to call you my friend, and you've done such a good job. And I know that you will fall. I know you'll slip in certain aspects of your life, but that doesn't take away what you've done for the good. And I know that you've been the good for so many people. And I'm so grateful you did this today with me.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. I think
Welcome.
you're amazing. Thank you. And I am always so, you being open and curious has allowed me to share more of who I am. And knowing if someone else doesn't like it, I know you appreciate it. And so it creates connection. And even though you're all the way in Utah, and one of these days I'll get there, it helps. Even if we're not in person together, these connections really make a difference if used for good and of service. So I really appreciate it.
Just explain social media. If you look for the bad and get caught up in the bad, you will find that. But that's not what you were looking for.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I have found.
This is what I'm looking for. And I believe you have a great unit of people. We share a couple of really great mutual friends.
Yeah.
I love the Outsider Coffee Company. They were, the original people that gave me a chance to share my story in the Outsider, in the Outsider magazine. And so I think that all of these things that are interwoven in our life for the good were really these little tender mercies from God saying, I'll hook you up with the people you need.
Yes, and the people a lot of times aren't the people that you think.
No.
So it's like, here's a woman, Lindsay McBail, who says, she like kept pouring into me. I said, why are you doing this? Why are you pouring into me so much? She said, Kristy, she said, it is not lost to me. And I remember her word for word. It is not lost to me that you're not going to be around me for very much longer. And I want to use you up. And I was like, wow, like she saw greatness in me that I didn't see. And that's what makes us keep going. So we all need to see the greatness in others, and she's amazing at that.
Well, I'm excited to read your book. I know you've been working on it.
It's pretty much done. I just, I need to find an agent because I want to traditionally publish. They said that I need more social media followers. So I'm going to work with Lindsay. Okay, good. Well, and my website is getting done now because the website that I have is from school. So it's getting done now. It'll be done within the next week or two. So the more social media followers I have, the agent said check back in a year. But it's done, and the book's really good, I think.
I bet it is. Well, I love this story. I love you. Thank you
I love
so much
you
for being willing to be with me.